Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome to day number 4 of our 5-day look at the dungeon command line. So we've unboxed so far Heart of Cormyr, Sting of Loth, and Tyranny of Goblins. Today we are going to be unboxing my actual full-on favorite faction from the entire game, and that is going to be Curse of Undeath. So Undead have always been amongst my favorite creatures to use in Dungeons & Dragons. So this one was like my most anticipated of all the faction sets to come out. So on the front here, we've got a skeletal dragon there, which looks pretty cool. We've got a skeleton dragon mounted on a skeletal horse, and we've got this guy here, which has some worms coming out. I know what all these things are, but I want to, I guess, save some of the say a little bit of surprise for later. And of course we've got a lich here, which just looks really cool. And yeah, so on the side we've got the skeletal dragon, you got the worm guy, and we got a skeleton. So we just have the wormy dude there and there. And again, I know what it is, I like to save it. And then on the back we just have bury your enemies. So that's the phrase for this one. Everything else is pretty much the exact same as far as the text goes. So let's go right straight to opening up the box. Now I think this came out a month or two after the Goblins set. I always confuse the release order if it was Tyranny of Goblins first or Curse of Undeath first, but they were, I think, within a couple months of each other. And if I recall, I had them both. I ordered them both at the same time, so I didn't get the Tyranny of Goblins one right away. And then we got, of course, we got our rule book here, which again is just the exact same. So you got like the cards from the original set, and however, this one actually has the color right. So I was wrong when I showed off the Tyranny of Goblins one, which had like the green and the yellow on the back. This one actually does at least have the proper color for the faction. Alright, let's do this first because I forgot to do that with the Goblins until the very end. So we've got our two leaders. We've got Delthrin Everett, who starts with 12 morale, 6 leadership, creature hand of 3, starting order hand of 3. However, he's got Bloodthirsty as his ability, so you gain 1 leadership for each enemy creature destroyed your turn. So you can really quickly get leadership increased if you use this guy, especially if you're going up against the Goblin faction, where it's really easy to kill things early on, and in addition to causing them to lose a morale for killing like your level 1 goblins that are kind of weenie, you also get to increase your leadership, which is pretty cool. So the quote here, he's got like some ghouls around him. His name is evoked to frighten the children of Marsember. Delthrin Everett is a necromancer of some skill who would prefer to replace the living people of Cormyr with pliable undead servants. Everett is drawn to the aftermath of violence more than to the conflicts themselves, preferring to pick over the battlefield for choice corpses to transform. So this one actually makes sense why he's not present in the battlefield. And his quote is, "The dead are just so much more reliable than the living." So, nice guy. Then we've got Morgana Velistova. So she starts with a 14 morale and a 7 leadership. She has a starting creature hand of 3 and order card of 5. And she has Unstoppable Horde, so all undead creatures you control gain the following. Tap, lose 1 morale, prevent 20 damage to this creature from 1 source. So losing the morale kind of hurts. I would have preferred if it was just tap and, you know, prevent 20. But I guess that's fine. And then you've got her quote is, "Morgana was once a beautiful maiden wedded to a gallant knight, but she was transformed into a vampire years ago, a process that tore her away from her beloved. She cast aside her old life, believing that it held nothing for her now. Although resigned to spend her undead nights in solitude, she has been roused by the conflict erupting around her. Those who face her rue the day they entered her home." And her quote is, "There's no such thing as eternal damnation. Nothing lasts forever." So those are your commanders. Just have a quick look at the terrain tile. So these are the end ones, and the outdoor, which has, you know, graves, which makes sense. Bone piles, which is pretty cool. And then the main tiles has this sacrificial slab, again with bone piles and braziers. And actually, what I like about this one is the walls actually have like sarcophagus in them, so it looks a little bit more morbid for that section there, and a little less interesting on the that side. And then of course we got a room with a magic circle, and we got a magic circle hidden in some shrubs and stuff that again blocks line of sight, which is again pretty cool. Preferably I like the dungeon side obviously for this one. Again, it just kind of makes more sense for them to use the dungeon side. Honestly, I think this is another one of the factions where I've never really looked too closely at the wilderness side, so that's always interesting. Alright, so let's start with the minis themselves. Starting with our basic ones that we have multiples of. So we've got just a zombie. He's pretty cool. We'll put him there. And we've got, of course, there are two of those, so I'm not going to show them both off too much. And then we've got the skeletons. And actually, again, I like the paint jobs on these skeletons. It looks like one of the more detailed sets so far. I don't think any of them have really shoddy paint jobs. Like, the Goblins had some pretty basic stuff. I mean, even the zombies have a little bit of, they look, I mean, they should look shoddy to begin with, but I like those. But these skeletons, I really like them. I think they did a fantastic job on these. And there are two of them. Alright, and we've got ourselves a Gravehound. So he's just a undead dog. Ribs sticking out, wounds on him. Not the most pleasant. Up next we have a Hypnotic Spirit. Focus, and this guy's actually, I don't think it's going to show up too well on camera. It might actually. This guy's actually translucent, which looks really cool. The miniature that it was based off of was actually solid, and it had like blue, it was painted blue, and then it had like a white dry brushing over it. But this thing's actually transparent, so you can actually see kind of through it, which is cool and just makes sense for the spirit. And he can actually go through walls, so why don't we put him in a wall? Spoiler, I guess, for his abilities. And then we've got the Skeletal Lancer. So he's the knight on the undead horse, which is again pretty cool. We'll put him back here. And we've got the Skeletal Tomb Guardian. So again, he's pretty cool skeleton. He's got 4 arms, lots of attacks. I like him a lot. Then we've got the Vampire Stalker. Come on. He's probably the most basically painted of all the miniatures, but it still does the job, in my opinion. Like the choice of colors that they used. And again, vampires are just kind of cool in Dungeons and Dragons anyway, before they were ruined by like the Twilight movies. Then we've got, so the worm guy that I kept talking about, or kept saying. So he is actually a disciple of Caius. So anyone who doesn't know, Caius is like the worm god, and he was used heavily in the Dungeon Magazine campaign path, Age of Worms. He was actually the final encounter, like the players fought him basically as a god or demigod. And from that moment, I just loved like Caius, everything surrounding him, and like the spawns of Caius and things like that. So like the Caius worms. And this guy just looks cool. He's got like a mask on, so you can't see his face. He's holding a little pot there that looks like it's got worms bursting out of it. So I just absolutely love this guy. One of my favorites miniatures. And again, I just love the spawn of Caius and the lore behind Caius to begin with. It's just really cool. It was done really well in that campaign. It was the last 3.5 campaign that I ran. And then we've got the Lich. Focus here. The Lich again is pretty cool, and this is another, once again, a translucent. So he's just kind of like swirling out of this like arcane mist. It looks great. I actually really like this. You know, I don't mind that it doesn't have like the lags or anything like that. This just looks so cool, and you know, really awesome miniature. And again, I love the translucent plastic there, which you can actually see through. Even the amulet that he's got kind of hanging off of his waist, you can see through that, which is again really cool. Put him right in the arcane circle, and then the big boy, the Dracolich. So this here is the Dracolich, and what's awesome about it is it's based off of a black dragon, which if you watch some of my other videos, the black dragon is my all-time favorite design for dragons in Dungeons & Dragons, or at least ever since 3rd edition, where they gave it sort of like the skeletal look. And this thing is just full-on skeletal. You know, he's on this rocky outcropping. It's just such a cool-looking miniature. The only thing is that it's hard to get it, you know, adjacent to things, so you kind of have to spin it around almost like he's hitting them with his tail. But this is just a really awesome miniature, and anything that's Black Dragon, I love. See if that's in frame there. Okay. All right. All right, last things to go through are going to be the cards. Now I'm just going to, again, organize the creature cards just sort of in the order that I kind of want to go through them, mainly because I want to keep the two that are repeated kind of close together and go from there. Alright, but before that, let's have a look at, so these are the cards for the cooperative board games. Now, these ones didn't really warp as bad, which is kind of strange because if you look, the other ones did. So I don't know why these cards, again, all stored in the same, you know, box, same environmental conditions, which again was not like a damp environment, but these ones actually, whoops, until I do that, these ones actually held up pretty well. So you got like the Dracolich, so all the creatures that are there are really cool. And I just want to see the Disciple of Caius, because I never actually really looked closely at this. Yeah, it doesn't really do anything with the worms, which is fine, I guess, but those are those. Alright, now we're going to look at the creature cards themselves. Alright, so the first one that we've got is the Zombie. So he's level 1 but 40 hit points, which is actually really great. So this is a really tough level 1 beater monster that you can put out on the field and absorb a few hits. He's got Constitution, he's an undead humanoid zombie, and speed of 4, so he's not the fastest, but during your deploy phase I can pay 1 morale to deploy this creature from your graveyard. Paying morale is always kind of difficult because losing morale is how you lose the game. So that kind of sucks. I think it would have been better if, for example, you could deploy it from your graveyard for free, but it already has like 20 or 30 damage on it or something like that, just so that you can bring it back, you can take hits, sort of thing. But if you bring this out, it dies, and you bring it back and it dies again, you're losing 3 morale for 2 level 1 creatures. So you got to be careful kind of how you do that. And of course, there's 2 of those. Then we got the Warrior Skeletons, which don't look anything like the picture, but that's fine. Speed of 6. They are level 2. Constitution, they only have 50 hit points, only 10 more hit points than the zombies. No special abilities. Then we got the Gravehound, level 2, 40 hit points, speed of 8, dexterity and con, and just has a melee attack for 10 damage, and again, nothing special there about them. Skeletal Tomb Guardian, so level 3, Constitution, 60 hit points, 6 speed, melee attack for 20. However, whenever this creature makes a melee attack, it deals 20 damage to each other enemy creature adjacent to this creature. So you want to basically move this guy into a group of enemies and try to get adjacent to all of them, attack one, and just slam the other. So you can do 60 points of damage divided amongst 3 creatures, which is really good. So he's actually really cool. Vampire Stalker, level 4, evil humanoid, undead vampire, 80 hit points, dex, con, and charisma. Speed of 6, melee attack for 30, and life drain. Whenever a target creature takes damage from this creature's melee attack, this creature heals 10 damage. So he's got a way of healing himself as well, which is again pretty cool. The Hypnotic Spirit. This one's kind of a glass cannon, unfortunately, but it's level 3, uses Charisma, 40 hit points. It phases, so it shifts and ignores walls while moving, although it can't actually end its movement in a wall. And it has insubstantial, speed of 6, sorry, by the way. Insubstantial, you can tap it to prevent all damage to this creature from one source. But only 40 hit points, so it's kind of difficult to keep this thing alive, unfortunately, even with this ability, because once you have it tapped to do that, then you know people can just dogpile onto it type of thing. I mean, they can do that with anything, but 40 hit points to lose 3 morale is pretty rough when you've got a level 1 creature that also has 40 hit points. So one thing to keep in mind is when's the right time to use this, and you kind of want to use it when there are other things that would be more threatening, I would say, and other things that would be more likely to draw the attacks, just so that you know, you can probably keep it alive just with this alone. But those 40 hit points are low. Then we got the Skeletal Lancer, so he's level 4, 100 hit points, Constitution, speed of 8, and 20 damage on a melee attack. Now he has the Rider ability similar to what the Goblin Rider had, so when this creature is destroyed, you can immediately deploy one skeleton creature of level 3 or lower in any square it occupied. So that does include the Tomb Guardian. So this is the one you probably want to try to use the most with this ability. So if you have both of these in your hand at the same time, I'd recommend putting the Lancer out first, because he's tough to kill, but when you kill him, you can drop something that, again, can deal lots of damage. And by the time you're probably doing that, your opponent probably has enough stuff on the field to make the absolute most of that ability, in my opinion. Alright, the Disciple of Caius, level 4, 70 hit points, Intelligence, Charisma. He's got a ranged attack that does 20 at 10 squares, and a melee attack of 10. Special ability is each enemy creature takes 10 damage whenever it ends its activation adjacent to this creature. So if you have people basically move into melee on this thing, and they end their turn next to it, then they're going to take damage from that, which is again pretty cool. Then we got the Lich Necromancer, level 5, 80 hit points, Intelligence and Charisma as well, speed of 6, range attack for 30 within 5 squares, which is pretty nasty, and a melee attack of 20, so this guy does a lot of damage. And his special abilities: when deploying any undead creature, you can place it in an unoccupied square adjacent to this creature. So everything is undead. So this guy is pretty awesome to have out, especially if you can, you know, after summoning him and getting him into position, you can drop the Dracolich. So level 6, 110 hit points, range attack for 20 damage within 5 squares, melee attack of 30, and he's got speed of 6. He's flying, and he has lightning breath, so you can make up to 3 ranged attacks. Each attack must target a different enemy creature. So this guy can again deal a lot of damage, and if you have the Lich Necromancer out, you can drop this guy in a place that's pretty near where the action is. The only thing with that kind of ability is because your deploy phase takes place after your actions, it does leave them open, so you don't want to have the Lich right in melee. What I usually do is actually kind of what I have set up here is I typically have the Lich in the room that has like the doors that block line of sight. Just leave him there for a while and summon my other creatures in this area, and then they can move out and attack from there. So that's typically what I do with that, and when it becomes too much of an issue, then I bring out the Lich to deal his massive 30 damage attacks. Alright, so that's that. Now we'll just go to the order cards. Again, these aren't organized. I'm not going to go through and organize all these for duplicates. And again, if you want to see what they do, I'm going to try to make sure that I leave them so you can see the whole card. Sometimes I'm looking off to the side of the camera and my hand shifts and I don't realize it, so I do apologize for that. But here we go. Careful attack. Necrotic Howl. Minor action, deals 10 damage to each enemy creature adjacent to this creature. So this one is actually really cool. I think there's 2 of these in the deck, so there are times that I'll drop them both at the same time and then deal like a major attack. Unbreakable. Prevent 50 damage. There it is, yep. So the other Necrotic Howl. Hypnotic Gaze. Corrosive Blood. Magic Short Sword. Hulking Attack. This one actually gains you morale, so this is the first faction that I think you gain morale from some of your order cards, which is cool. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I think Hardcore Mirror may have had something. Regenerate. Have it regenerate 10 points of damage each turn. Unending Horde. Minor action, you can shift some undead. Dispel Magic. Warning Shout. Vampiric Touch. Deals 3 damage. Heal 30 damage, which is great. Defensive Advantage. Oh, and I don't... Yeah, I think I did already, but just in case, Vampire Affinity. So the Vampire Aristocrat, I don't believe, has the Intelligence ability. Normally. And of course, he's the one that's... Where is he? There he is. Vampire Stalker. Yeah, so he doesn't actually have Intelligence. He's got Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma. However, because he's a vampire, you can use this card even without having the Intelligence ability. Which, again, I think was something that was kind of missing from the Goblins. It would have been nice if they had something that would have made the order cards a little easier to use there. Defensive Advantage, Fear, Gout of Fire, so deal a ranged attack that deals plus 20 damage. So with the Lich Necromancer, that's 50 damage, which is pretty mean. Call to Battle. So you attach it as a standard action, deploy one creature now. If this creature is in a magic circle square, you gain 1 morale before deploying. So again, this is something that I typically use with the Lich. Although your leadership, I believe, still applies. Relentless Advance. Mage Armor. So you can tap to prevent 10 damage. Dimension Door. Another Mage Armor. Cloud of Bats. And has the Vampire Affinity. Although the Vampire is not high enough level to use it. So that's interesting. I guess you can use it anyway. I don't know. I'll have to look that up actually. Hulking Attack. Terrifying Revelation. Target opponent loses 3 morale. So this can only be used, I think, by the Dracolich, unless you have something assist like the Necromancer, for example. But just an order card where it's like, bam, 3 morale can be potentially pretty devastating. Warning Shout. Death Grip. A second Death Grip. Another Hypnotic Gaze, because I'm pretty sure we had them before. Another Gout of Fire, so that can again be pretty mean. A second Vampiric Touch. Come on now. There we go. Spawn Akaya, so I like this one. Level 1 Constitution. You attach it to an undead and they gain the ability to deal 10 damage whenever something ends their turn adjacent to them. So I actually like that card a lot. Careful Attack. Defensive Advantage. Unbreakable. Prevent 50 damage. Relentless Advance. And another Fear. So that is Curse of Undeath. And like I said, this is one of my favorite factions in the game. A lot of their abilities work very well together in concert. The only thing that I would have liked to have seen done differently is something with the zombies. Because, you know, losing a morale to bring them back really isn't great. I don't like that because, again, you're going to lose 3 morale to kill 2 level 1 zombies. So there's very few situations where it's really worth it. If there were cards, for example, I think there's only one in here that gains you a morale, so there's not a lot to increase your morale. Other faction, the last faction that we go through, I think has a little bit more morale gain in it. So you got to really, again, be kind of careful with that. I would have preferred, for example, that you could, again, bring it back free of cost, but it has damage on it already. Or, you know, if you lose a morale to bring it back, you don't lose a morale if it dies. Just something to make it actually worth using this ability. There was a scenario that I actually came up with where morale works a little bit differently, so this ability actually got used a lot more in that scenario. So again, I'll probably do either a video for them, or I'll post them on Patreon or my Facebook, so you can kind of see some of the scenarios that I've come up with. But other than that, there's a lot of great stuff in here. Love this faction. It is my absolute favorite, and it's the one I've had the most success with. So anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.